So, if you're interested in starting calligraphy and you really want to get into it and you want to do dip pens, I totally suggest doing dip pens because I think that it is the cheapest option. I think that there are actually YouTubers out there who confess that it is the cheapest option than to buy, fountain pens. This fountain pen right here with a whole set, because this fountain pen comes with um, comes with its own different nibs, right? And this is the ink cartridge. So you're limited on your inks whenever you use fountain pens. Also, I find that the lines, even though this is an italic nib, as you can see, it's not as crisp. The lines aren't as crisp. And if my computer will comply, I will use my nose as a background. But you can already see which one is thinner and which one is thicker on the profile. This one is probably, it's like less than another millimeter thick. Like this, I would say, is probably like third of a millimeter, and this one is probably like half a millimeter thick, you know. But it makes a difference. It might seem like it won't, but it does. Also, I find that the ink for fountain pens is waterier and it'll spread because your fountain pen inks are going to be water-based. So just know that if you buy ink like this for a dip pen and you try to stick it in one of these, you're going to clog it up and you're going to have to get out the ammonia and soak it and just keep flushing it out with ammonia until you're done. That's another thing. Now, I like to use, whenever I clean my nibs at the end, this is very important because these nibs are not permanent. You're not going to buy one of these nibs and never buy one again. These are things that you have to replenish over time because they'll either rust, they'll wear. The tines, let's say that you're riding and your cat jumps on your back and you go, bah! And then now your tines are crooked. Well, that nib is useless now. You need to throw it away. If it's rusty, it's useless. If you forget to take it out of your rubbing alcohol, and I like to keep a little, like this is like a cheap little travel bottle that I just put my rubbing alcohol in, and I always keep paper towels on my desk so that I can clean them as I go. As soon as I'm done working with a nib, I clean it immediately. I use rubbing alcohol on these pointed nibs, right? So this is the Nico G, and this is the Browse Pumpkin. They're very easy to clean with rubbing alcohol. These, your italic nibs, I find it very difficult. The ink really wants to stick underneath of this brass plate, and there's also another brass plate here, and the ink just sticks there and it will rust. It will affect your flow because this is kind of like the chamber where it holds the ink a little bit up here, right? These I always clean in ammonia. Sometimes I have left my nibs in ammonia and ruined them and had to go out and get more. Your nibs will rust inside ammonia. They will also, the brass will become very rubbery. Very, very rubbery. Now, when I was in Alabama, I actually found some really old speedball nibs. This was like old stock that they just had mixed in with the new stock. So like, look at this one. This one's pretty new. I got it from Texas Art Supply here. This one I got in Alabama. And whenever I cleaned it with ammonia, the painting came off of this. I think this is like nickel or something else. This is not brass. This part here, the flanges and the things that's brass. This one is made out of something else. It is so much more durable. This is my favorite nib. I have no idea how I completely lucked out and found a vintage nib at the same price as a new one somewhere. And I realized that There is a whole market for vintage nibs. In fact, I even got, is it this one? Yes. I bought a left-handed nib and didn't realize it was a left-handed nib because it was one of the antique ones. Like it was one of the vintage ones that they had in old stock. So I have a left-hander's nib. And that's another thing. If you are left-handed, here's the difference between a left-handed nib and a right-handed. These nibs, the italic line is not cut straight across. It's cut slightly at an angle. So this is the left-handed nib, and it's cut at this angle. This is the right-handed nib, and it's cut at that angle. So maybe now you can see the difference. Anyway, it's a little bit different. So if you are left-handed, make sure that you get italic nibs that are better suited to you. And if you are left-handed, you don't need to buy one of these. You don't need to buy an oblique pin holder. It's not necessary. You can use one of these because the whole purpose of using this is to get a right-hander person's angle this way. So you want your lines to slant like this off. But if you're left-handed, you're already slanting at that angle perfectly, which I find hilarious. And just because you're left-handed, don't think that you can't do calligraphy. Don't think that you can't. Now, I also suggest putting your nibs in a container. Usually, like, you can find mint containers or Altoids containers. I found this really cute candy skull container at, like, put my dirty nibs. This is the lid. I'll put my dirty nibs in here. That's why you see a little bit of ink here and there. But also, I'll put the caps. A lot of your inks will come with caps that have a dripper. I'll put that cap here and here to keep it from rolling around all over my desk and getting trace amounts of ink everywhere. Because it might look like a trace amount of ink, and then it spreads, it gets everywhere, and it's a mess. That's why I say, keep the paper towel, keep the rubbing alcohol. And even though I do clean my italic nibs in ammonia, I still wipe them off with alcohol when I'm done, just to kind of like minimize loss, I guess. Because there's a lot of ink in there. Like those italic nibs will hold a lot more ink than you think. Kind of rhymed, nibs. It'll hold a lot of ink, and if you just take a wet nib and put it in that ammonia just turns completely black. And if you accidentally leave your nib in there longer than like 30 minutes, you will have this black kind of opaque look to the metal, and your brass will get faded, but it'll also have like that gray tone to it. So be very careful when you're using ammonia. Don't just leave them in there. I do that, and I don't want you to do that. It is a mistake every time. I don't suggest buying sets. This is the big one. This is the important one. I don't like to buy sets of calligraphy stuff. I did the very first time I did, and it was the absolute worst because it didn't come with any italic nibs at all. It was a calligraphy set that came with no italic nibs. It had a couple of really low quality pointed calligraphy nibs, very low quality, and it had something called monoline nibs, which I think I've talked about before. They look like italic nibs, but they've got a little circle on the end. Basically, it's like drawing with a giant ballpoint, and you will not get the pretty, crisp, italic stuff going on, and it's just a waste of time. Oh, here is... This is a much better quality one. This is the Hunt pointed pin nib. Now this one doesn't have a lot of give, so it's not going to give you that dramatic effect where, like, whenever you're doing your cursive and you push down, like, give you that sweeping prettiness. This one is best if you're writing really small You're writing something really small, and you don't want your ink to gob. So this is that. This is the Browse Rose, and this is like, oh my god, like the Rolls Royce of pointed pen nibs, and I'm just going to show you why. The tines spread so much with so little effort. When you get really, really good, this thing makes you like Mozart. You know, like this one's great. But if you're not quite to that stage yet, I love using the Browse Pumpkin. Now this is after you've done some homework on your calligraphy and you kind of know where to push down. You only push down on your downstrokes. Whenever you do an upstroke, you're literally just gliding the nib on top of the paper. It's like a little cheat for you. And whenever you go down is whenever you press down gently. And this will start to show you those really good lines. And this one, it uses a little bit more effort to spread the tines, and the tines don't spread as much as the Browse Rose does. The Nico G, I love this one. This one is actually my favorite one. It cleans super well. Whenever I left this once in ammonia for a week, this is the same one. These things are indestructible. They've got to be made out of stainless steel entirely. They're made in Japan. Nico Pen, Nico G. They're indestructible. Absolutely indestructible. You want a nib to last you forever? Get a Nico G. They're great. They're great. And whenever you go, instead of buying, like I said, a set, go get you a couple of nibs. Now the sizes of the nibs, if you're looking for italic, they're all going to be labeled C dash and then a number. The number is how wide the tip of the nib is. So this is a C2, this is a C0, and I'll show you my C5. I love the C5. It's super tiny, but it's just barely italic, and it's perfect. I love it. I will sometimes use this to write in cursive just to add that extra flair to my cursive handwriting. So I definitely suggest just buying a few little nibs, trying it out. Don't buy a set. And as far as ink is concerned, I'll show real quick. These Speedball testers are really great. And it's just a little bit of ink, sure, and I got colored ones. You can get the black one, but I just bought the colored ones. You do have to shake these up because I find that the Speedball inks settle really badly. So just give it a good shake before you open it. And also, it's wide enough. This is going to be a problem if you buy ink, just saying. It will always be a bitch to open it up the first time after a while. It's also wide enough to dip an oblique pin into, because you've got the little flange hanging off that holds the nib. You can stick the whole thing in here. So I definitely suggest building your own kit. You could build your own kit for less than $5 if all you buy is this, 2 nibs, and one of these. It's like, it might be $6 after taxes kind of thing, and you can build a much better one for $10 and get yourself a few other nibs to play with, maybe another bottle of ink. You can really build your own kit this way to match any budget that you're under. I hope this got you excited to try out calligraphy, and I hope that you'll join me for the next video. If you have any more questions, I would love for you to leave comments in the bottom down here. And if your question is complicated enough, you have a really complicated question, I'll devote an entire video to it to make sure that you have all that you need to succeed. So, bye.